A warm welcome to our panel guests and our attendees. Look at the weather today. What a lovely day for an interesting seminar on India's population policy. My name is Rina Sander. I'm the author of the book, The Moderne India, which is written in Norwegian, and also founder of the NGO, The Moderne India. By 2030, China and India will account for 34% of the world's population. Keeping in mind China's growing elderly population, declining number of childbearing women, and shrinking working population base, the Chinese government has announced a 3-child policy, permitting a couple to have 3 children. India, home to 1/6 of all humanity, holds the key to the success of the 2030 agenda. It's a well-known fact that many of the world's leading intellectuals are Indian. We are honored to have with us Dr. Parakala Prabhakar. He is a political economist and a policy consultant. He was communication advisor to the state government of Andhra Pradesh between 2014 and 2018. He was also a member of the task force that formulated India's 10th 5-year plan. Mr. Prabhakar holds a PhD from London School of Economics. He writes regularly on economic and political issues for Indian publications. You can tune into his Midweek Matters, that's his weekly program on comment on major economic and political developments. It's on YouTube and other digital platforms. He currently heads a knowledge enterprise, RightFOLIO, based in Hyderabad. Joining with Dr. Prabhakar, we will have Kim Gabrielli, the Executive Director at UN Global Compact Norway, and Caroline Myklebust Linde, she's CEO of Lærdal Global Health. The first session will be a presentation by Dr. Prabhakar. Then we will have the other joining us, and you must feel free to raise your hands and come and join us on the stage. Now, I would like to hand over the word to Dr. Prabhakar. Please, Dr. Prabhakar.
Thank you very much, Lina. And greetings to everybody who is present there. My special warm greetings to Arendalsuka and the session that is being conducted now, and all the participants as well as the co-panelists. Probably you all know that India hosts about 17.8% of the world's population. And China is about 18.08% population. Together, China and India today, that is the UN estimate until 2020, was about 35.88% of the world's population. It's a huge chunk. I would limit myself to what is happening in India insofar as the population is concerned, population growth is concerned, and India's population policy, as well as India's, what I call India's population politics. I will give you a brief outline of these issues, and we can elaborate some of them during our Q&A. Now, the first time that India realized that, we have to look at the expanding population was in 1952. And the government started educating people that we should limit our population, the family size. There was a lot of effort by the government in terms of communication, education, and information. People were encouraged to limit their number of children. The slogan used to be, 2 or 3 children. We never had one child policy. It was always 2 or 3 children. Now you see, in those decades, India was a poor country. It still is a poor country, but much better than what it was in 1952. And the general tendency to look at population not as a resource, but as a burden. Because the food production was very limited. This was before the Green Revolution, which was in the 1960s and 70s, when India became self-sufficient in food production. But we are talking about the decades that were before the Green Revolution, where a child is born is a mouth to be fed, an extra mouth to be fed. It was a very Malthusian kind of approach and attitude towards population. Population was not seen in a poor country, in a country where food production was very limited. It was not seen as a resource, but it was seen as mouths to be fed. It was not seen as a labor force. It was not seen as a factor of production. But gradually, after the country became self-sufficient in food production and various other things, and started developing industrially in the 70s and in the 80s, gradually there was a consciousness. And then as economy began developing, the people who were going from the poverty level into the middle class level or upper middle class level, as the prosperity grew, automatically people started limiting their size of the family. It is very interesting. In most of the societies, the poorer families tend to have more children. It happened in India too, and it happens in India too even today. Now, we had a little bit of a dark time during 1975 and 77, where there was forced sterilization. Very brief period, but it was a very traumatic period. And after that, there was a huge reaction. The government fell, the government was defeated, the government of Mrs. Gandhi. And then population policy never tried to look at the coercive side of implementation. It was always a way of looking at the entire issue in terms of communication, in terms of education, in terms of information. So this was the backdrop. But you see, today, where does India stand in terms of population? Now, the government of India had submitted an affidavit to the Supreme Court when there was a public interest litigation by one of the citizens of the country that the government should implement a limited family, a limited children policy, limited child policy, 2 children policy, 2 child policy. The government had said that it was not necessary because we have already reached the replacement level. For those who are not familiar with the concept of replacement level, it is 2.1. That is, for a couple, 2 children, if 2 children are born, they are going to replace the 2 parents. Therefore, 2 children, and statistically it is called 2.1. If 2 children are born, it is replacement level. If it is more than 2%, it's more than replacement level. And India is almost on the verge of 2.2, 2.3, according to the last data available, the latest data available. We conduct periodically, we conduct National Family Health Survey. in the National Health Family Survey of 2020, which could not be completed for the entire country, but a large number of states, it could be completed because of COVID-19 and the restrictions. Except about 3 or 4 states, almost all the other states of the country, 29 states of the country and 6 union territories, have reached replacement level. Very few states, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Mizoram, I think, or Meghalaya, a few states which were somewhere around 3.2, 2.9 in that region. So most of the country is now at the replacement level. Therefore, the population today is at the replacement level, and there's not much of an issue in terms of what used to be called the population explosion. This is the state of affairs of the population now. Now, what kind of a population do we have? Now, you see, we have 54% of our population which is below 25 years, which is remarkable. And 62% of our country's population, India's population, is between 15 and 59 years of age. That is, working age group. 65% of India's population is in the working age group. Now, this is called the demographic dividend. We have a huge pool of human resource, working hands, people who are in the age group. They're producing population. They're productive population. They're not retired people where, people will have to work and then feed them. If you look at the median age of India, by 2025, the median age of India is going to be 31 years. And by 2050, it's going to be 38 years. Now, I'll give you a few comparative data. In the US, it's going to be 40 years by 2025, the median age. And by 2050, it's going to be 42. In China, 2025, the median age is going to be 39. And by 2050, it's going to be 44. Japan, as you know, it's already a very aged population. By 2025, Japanese median age is going to be 50 years. And by 2050, it's going to be 53 years. If you look at Europe, it's going to be, by 2025, the median age is going to be 45, and by 2050, it's going to be 49. Now, what do we take away from the comparative data that I had just given? That is, the demographic dividend of India is going to last till about 2050. Even by 2050, the median age of India is going to be 38 years, which is going to be less than USA, less than China, less than Japan, less than Europe, and and if you look at the labor participation, the world data shows us, the projection shows us by next year and by 2030, the world is going to be decreasing. And the labor participation rate is going to be 4% increase, whereas for India it is going to be 32% increase. Now that is the kind of asset that we have in India. So you have the total fertility rate, which has reached the replacement level. And as it is, what we have is a very huge chunk of population which is going to be in the productive age. That is 62% of the population going to be in the productive age. And then the median age is going to be much lower than other major economies in the world even by 2050. And the labor participation rate is going to be 32% rise, and compared to 4% increase world over. This is the kind of scenario that we have. But then what is the quality of this population. That is an important thing because you see, only less than 5% of this population is a formally trained, formally skilled population, which is something which is very disturbing. Again, if you compare what I had given you about the median age, but compared to the skill, now you see about 68% of the labor force in United Kingdom is trained. 75% of it is trained in Germany, 52% in the United States, and 80% of the labor force is formally skilled and formally trained in Japan, as much as 96% of its labor force is trained in South Korea. Now compare that to India, which is under 5%. Now, this is the issue that we have to face. We have a huge productive population, and our median age is going to be much less than almost all the major economies, and our labor participation rate is going to increase by 32%. But that labor participation, is going to be an unskilled labor participation if we do not take advantage of this and train the population. Having said this, the government of India's policy is that there is no need for any coercion. There is no need for any kind of push in terms of limiting the family size. But some state governments are going in for policies of not exactly coercion, but incentivizing limiting of the family size. Although even those states, the TFR, that is the total fertility rate, has reached the replacement level. But then here comes the political aspect, that some sections of the population, people belonging to certain religions, certain practices, are supposed to have larger families. So therefore, there is a tendency to target those populations to limit their families and limit the increase in their population. Of course, that is a political question. So this is the overall scenario of India's population status and Indian government's population policy.
Thank you very much, Prabhakar, for giving us the overview and putting this into a historical perspective as well. I have a few questions for you, Mr. Prabhakar. You have been telling us about the working population in India, how many have gathered what kind of skills from abroad, what we are lacking in India. But to what extent is India able to leverage its demographic dividend?
Okay. Reena, it's a very difficult situation insofar as leveraging the demographic dividend. I'll tell you why. Because you see, as I told you that less than 5% is formally trained, the skill. And the Indian government had started a skill development mission sometime in 2014-15. It has given a new impetus in 2014-15. Of course, we had a skill development mission even earlier, but from 2010 onwards till this year, we want to achieve our goals about on skill development, but there is a huge gap. The gap that is projected by the Indian government and by the statistical organizations, I'll just give you a brief idea about the numbers from somebody from Norway and somebody from Europe. These numbers might sound staggering, but they are real numbers for India. There's going to be a shortage of 150 million skilled workers in infrastructure by 2022, 35 million in auto and auto components sector, 33 million in building and construction, 26 million in clothing and textiles, about 18 million in transport and logistics, another 17 million in organized retail, about 14 million in real estate services, around 13 million in healthcare, and about 10 million in food processing, and 6 million in education. Reena, these numbers sound as though, they are the countries, isn't it? 6 million, 10 million, 18 million, 33 million, 35 million. Some of the countries have that kind of a population. But then we have that number is the gap, the skill gap that we have. We require that. Our industry, our infrastructure, our education sector, our health sector, our textile sector, our automobile sector and auto parts sector demand these kind of numbers. So that is the huge challenge that we have. If we have to become, completely take advantage of this, we need to look at these numbers and train them. Yeah. If we do not train them, these young people, we have about 54% of our population is below 25 years today. Yeah. And, they are going to be unskilled and therefore unemployable and unemployed. And, it is not like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, where a skill is imparted and you join a job and till your retirement, you stick with that job and you stick with that skill. It's not that. The world has changed. The world is changing very rapidly. And you're trained today, and then in 2 years' time, you may have to be retrained. In 5 years, again, you need to be retrained. And I've come across a research report by McKinsey, which says that, today, if a young person joins an employment, by the time he or she retires, they will have to undergo a retraining and reskilling at least for about 6 to 8 times. So that is the situation that is projected before Corona. And after Corona, we do not know how the world of work has changed. Many more skills are required, many more new skills are required. Probably the jobs that we see around today may not exist. And jobs that we have not thought about might come about. This is the kind of situation that we are faced with.
Yes. A very interesting numbers you have mentioned. Norway is a country with 5.3 million people. My last question for you, Dr. Parakala, is what are the political and economic implications of population policy pursued by some of the Indian states?
Okay. Let me talk about the economic implications, first of all, Reena. Now, there was a huge enthusiasm and a lot of expectation when, last 10 years, when we were able to see what India is going to be in 2022, what India is going to be in 2025 and 2050, we were looking at our population as a huge resource. But now, because the efforts at skilling have not really gone ahead as we expected, then we, in the policy analysis domain, all of us began to worry and grew anxious. What are these young people going to do if they're not skilled and ready for job? There is work, but you see, they're not qualified. In fact, you see, there was last year there was an India skills report. Maybe Carolina will be familiar with that much more. And that report looked at various disciplines of, in not IITs, but ITIs, in industrial training institutes, and then people who looked at, engineering courses, and people who looked at the business administration courses, people who looked at the pharmacy courses, and people who passed out of these. Across the board, Reena, less than 50% of the graduates from these, of these courses were found to be with possessing employable skills. So this is something which is, again, is a cause for worry to us. So if India is not able to take advantage of this demographic dividend economically, our goal of turning India into $5 trillion economy, our dream of making India a superpower, not in terms of military superpower, but an economic superpower, not for a domination, but contributing more wealth to the world, becoming a production hub, a manufacturing hub. That dream is going to be, that distance. This is the economic fallout of, our falling behind the goals and targets of skilling India. The political implications, when you have a large young people, 54% of under 25s, and about 62% of between 15 and 62. If large number of those people are not gainfully employed, I think that is going to cause a huge unrest, because they're all going to be unemployed. They're all going to be, most of them are going to be underemployed. Most of them are going to have less incomes. And in a very connected world today, the demonstration effect is, say in the 60s and 70s, people knew how Europe lived and how America lived and how Korea lived, or how a developed country lived, only when they went and saw there. And today, instantly, what is happening in Kabul airport. Instantly, what is happening in Washington, and you are able to talk, like this. What is happening in your country, your town, how you live and how you conduct yourself. So if our young people come to know that they are behind, they are not able to look after themselves well, their health, their education, their employment, their incomes, their standard of living are much worse and far behind of those who are their fellow world citizens, that is going to lead to a huge unrest.
Yes, thank you very much.
And the first agency which is going to come into contact with this unrest is going to be the state governments.
It's very interesting, all the knowledge you are sharing, and it definitely the coming decade will be interesting. And it's always a pleasure, Dr. Prabhakar, to have you, whether it's on Clubhouse or like this. I really hope one day we can invite you to Norway. So
Thank you.
I wish all of you a very nice day ahead, and maybe we will see each other another time. All the best for today. Thank you so much, all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.